I'm Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports. This is the week one edition, post edition of the Nameless Football Show. First things first, I got to tell you, I am a CBS Sports NFL draft analyst and young player analyst, founder of the Practice Squad Power Rankings, as shown by my shirt. This is a perk of my wife having her own Etsy store, print-on-demand Etsy store. Made me this awesome shirt this summer as a nice little gift getting ready for the football season. And the Nameless Football Show, you ask any question you want within reason in the comment section on YouTube or here on TikTok, and I will answer it. I want to get through. So what I did in the summer was mostly discuss previous articles that I had written that past week or so at CBS Sports when the schedule was a little bit lighter, when I was writing only a couple articles a week. Now it's 5 days a week. I'm writing an article every single day. And I want to just, for this episode, and we'll see, this show can evolve. I can follow and do what the people want as the season progresses, but I want to just touch on every single game. I want you, if you're watching this, to see the Nameless Football Show and understand that I will be doing some type of analysis on your favorite team. So I'm going to run through all the games, give some thoughts on it, maybe touch on some TikToks that I have posted over the past couple of days since we've seen football action, starting really with Friday and Saturday in college football, and then moving through last night's crazy Broncos-Seahawks game. I'll start there. What I will say is it was such a strange game. It felt a little bit weird that the Broncos were only 6.5-point favorites, but then you factor in it was new head coach Nathaniel Hackett, first-time head coach Nathaniel Hackett, on the road in a raucous environment. There's the Russell Wilson homecoming. I thought it was a little strange that the Broncos only gave Javonte Williams less than 10 carries. Like, what was that? He got 18 total touches because he had 11 receptions, but Javonte Williams has to touch the football more. Like, he needs to be handed the football more frequently than Melvin Gordon. He averaged more yards per carry, and he's just going to break more tackles. He's going to deliver more big hits in the open field. You just saw how he finishes runs. I mean, we got a glimpse of that last season on those 103 carries, but at UNC, he was just an absolute wrecking ball, who's also sudden, has good burst, good vision, all that kind of stuff. Very quickly, before I finish on the Broncos Seahawks, got a question, or I guess a comment. Bro, the Giants have a legit chance of being 4-0. That's not crazy. It really is. And I think getting past that first game, beating the former number one overall seed, last year's number one overall seed in the AFC, the Titans, they certainly had to get a missed field goal to get that victory, but that was huge for them. I think that could be a culture-shifting win for the Giants. They weren't great. They got into a big hole, but I like the way that they fought, and it's kind of the low-hanging fruit that we saw during the telecast was really out there on Twitter a lot, that the Joe Judge, the Jason Garrett Giants of the past couple of seasons would absolutely have folded being down double digits. Not this team, with certainly better health and a more healthy complement of their stars with Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, a lot of those players that just had been on the shelf for so long over the past couple of seasons, having been injured on the field. But just with Brian Daboll or GM Joe Shane, better pieces up front on the offensive and defensive lines, I really like the resiliency from the Giants. How do you think Icky and Charles Cross did? Charles Cross started strong. I kind of felt bad for him during the broadcast. He almost got the commentator's jinx that right as Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were lauding Charles Cross and saying he's doing such a great job against Bradley Chubb, in that third and fourth quarter, he gave up a couple of sacks, just was not strong setting that edge, as Bradley Chubb just really beat him to the outside with quickness and speed to power conversion. But the first half, when the Seahawks really looked like the considerably better team, Charles Cross looked great. I thought Ike Ekwonu looked very good at times against Myles Garrett and the complement of those rushers there in Cleveland, but not anything spectacular from either one of those two top 10 first-round picks at left tackle. But it's their first game in the NFL, and they were facing quality pass rushers. Myles Garrett might be the best outside pass rusher in the NFL. It's either him or TJ Watt. And facing Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory was certainly not a piece of cake for Charles Cross, who was playing in an air raid offense that was not very translatable to the NFL level just last season. And he's really young, too. Let me push this up a little bit so we get a little. Let's check the YouTube, see if there's any comments in there. There's not. Khalil Mack, Defensive Player of the Year. He could win he could win Comeback Player of the Year. That would not surprise me whatsoever. That was a comment from Mitchell Bennett. I posted that video yesterday, and I went with the lead that this is scary for the rest of the NFL, that Khalil Mack is back, and he's rushing on the same line as Joey Bosa. Like, that's unfair. Like, I get that Khalil Mack has had injuries. He's over 30 at this point, but go watch that TikTok that I posted. The first sack that he had of Derek Carr, he literally ran through the right tackle and was bear hugging Derek Carr and the right tackle at the same time. You do not see that very often at all in the NFL. Khalil Mack, I don't think he'll win Defensive Player of the Year. And certainly he took advantage of kind of a lesser offensive line there that the Raiders have. But just to have him seeing so many more one-on-ones, and he's probably seen since his early days with the Raiders, because he was doubled so often in Chicago, he could be in for a very big season. And even if you do a good job against him on one side, you have Joey Bosa, who's a top 5 to 7 edge rusher in the NFL. You could convince me that he's a top 3 edge rusher in terms of just overall production, run stopping ability, pass rush ability, having the full arsenal, speed, power, pass rush moves, all of that. Have him on the other side with Derwin James and some of the pieces that they have on that defense, and then throw in Justin Herbert and everything that they can do offensively. That's why the Chargers, I think, are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, because they have a very well-rounded team. They're not crazy deep, but they have the superstars, man, with Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. When J.C. Jackson returns, I think Asante Samuel is going to be a good cornerback as well. They're a legitimate contender, not just in the AFC, but to get to and win the Super Bowl. They're that good. And, I mean, we'll see what they do inside that super competitive AFC West. They got past the first hurdle, though, beating the Raiders. And I think with the Raiders, and I'll just go right into that game, we saw my one hesitation or reservation for the Raiders, the offensive line. I mean, Colton Miller is good. I'm just worried about the right side of the line. I think interior is okay, but it almost kind of feels reminiscent, oddly enough, of what happened with the Chargers last season, that the right side of their line really held back that offense so much that Justin Herbert was seeing so much pressure from the right side of the line. It was hard for him to roll right outside of the pocket, and it was just hampering what they could do offensively with down the field throws. I mean, Devontae Adams, 8. Darren Waller made some plays. Hunter Renfrow wasn't as high volume as we saw him last year, but that was kind of expected. He still looked very good. Derek Carr actually played a solid game, I thought, individually, but when he's pressured, he's not going to be a top-tier quarterback. When he's behind a good offensive line, and we've seen that a few times in his career, he can be, it's in terms of statistically a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And last year, he really took a step forward behind a good offensive line, even without, of course, Devontae Adams, that Derek Carr pushed the football down the field more often and was actually effective as a downfield thrower. He's always been very good and very efficient underneath and at the intermediate level. But last season, we saw the down the field stuff. I'm just a little concerned about the Raiders' offensive front. Now, I don't think they will be as bad as they were blocking for Derek Carr, again, as they were against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and some of the pieces that the Chargers have on their front seven. But that is the one reservation that I think in this hyper-competitive AFC West that I think is going to really hold back the Raiders this season. They have the weapons. They have the superstars. And I think they have decent depth. The defense is really anchored by Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, but do they have enough protection to allow Devontae Adams to run those long developing intricate routes down the field and for Derek Carr to just not be flustered inside the pocket? I think he does a good job moving around in the pocket and drifting away from pressure once in a while, but he's certainly not an improvisation-based quarterback. And we saw that with the 3 interceptions, that's what's going to happen when Derek Carr is under pressure as frequently as he was against the Chargers. Questions. Let's see. How do you think Jeffrey Okudah looked? You know what? I haven't watched the Lions defense against the Eagles offense. So I'm it's Tuesday. I'm trying to get through as much as I can. So I can't speak to that yet. I'm sorry I couldn't answer that. Trade Montgomery and D-Hop for Antonio Gibson. I know Antonio Gibson led the Commanders in rushing and receiving in the opening week, but you're hearing it all over the internet. Don't overreact to what you saw in week one too much. I don't, certainly without Brian Robinson there and JD McKissick kind of in the background of that offense, I think Antonio Gibson will have a good season. It's kind of funny. All offseason, it was Antonio Gibson. He's running with the third team. He's a kick returner. It's going to be the Brian Robinson show. Now, certainly what happened to Brian Robinson was extremely unfortunate, super scary, super sad situation. But I think Antonio Gibson kind of proved to any of the naysayers, maybe even on that Commanders coaching staff, that he's a 230-pound back with 4.39 speed who really was able to quickly transition to being a full-time running back after mostly being a wide receiver at Memphis. I wouldn't do any crazy trades week one. I would at least on your fantasy team, let it play out. Maybe week two, by week three, if you're really unhappy, then you can start sending out those trade offers. But I would not trade David Montgomery and DeAndre Hopkins for Antonio Gibson. Should I trade Alvin Kamara for Pittman? I have Javonte and Mixon. I wouldn't hate that. I'm a little bit lower on Michael Pittman in terms of what he can do throughout the course of a season, but I know he had a big game in that comeback against the Texans. And if you have Javonte Williams and Joe Mixon, I think you're going to be pretty set at the running back spot. You do want depth at running back, though. That's certainly key, but usually throughout a season, if there are running back injuries, you can pick up, RB2s or RB3s to kind of fill in. So if you're desperate at receiver and you want Michael Pittman, I wouldn't hate that trade. Very quick, is James Cook droppable? Not yet. Any other fantasy questions? Unless it's major, I'm going to table those for at least next week or week 3. I want to talk about that Texans-Colts game. So the Texans get out to the big lead. I'm with my brother-in-law, and I'm saying, look, no one knows. Everyone expects the Colts to just blow them out. And look at this. This is an easy win for the Texans. The Colts come storming back. It was kind of similar to what we saw in the Saints-Falcons game, at this perennial or over the past couple of years bottom feeder in a divisional game gets out to a big lead. It's holy crap, are they going to win this game? And then the team that has been on top for the longest time over the past 5 to 10 years storms back. The Saints, fortunately for them, get the victory. The Texans and Colts tied. And I'm watching that game and I'm wondering what Lovie Smith was thinking deciding to kick that field goal or to punt. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Nate Hackett. To punt 4th and 3 from the Colts 49-yard line with 30 seconds to go. I understand you have a young quarterback. This fourth quarter, the Colts defense had played a lot better. Davis Mills, who did start off pretty well, kind of took a step back or two in the third and fourth quarter after halftime. But come on, this is a team that over the past 2 years has been a bottom feeder, even when they had Deshaun Watson having that amazing season in 2020 individually. Change the culture, change the vibe with that organization. You're a new head coach. I would have been like, you know what? We're going for this. And yeah, maybe if we don't connect on a 4th and 3 pass at the 50, we give Matt Ryan 3 opportunities to move the ball 10 to 15 yards to get into field goal range. But playing for a tie, I guess I get at the end of the season, it's all about win percentage, and it is a little bit better to have a tie on your record or on your resume than a loss. But I was watching it live and I was shocked that Lovie Smith decided to punt there. If I'm him, I'm thinking, hey, look, our over-under for Vegas wins this season is 4.5. Let's try to steal a win right here. Let's be aggressive. Let's not play afraid to lose. Let's play to win. That was really a shame. I thought Davis Mills played well. Didn't play great. Brandon Cooks still did his thing. And Dameon Pierce getting severely outsnapped by Rex Burkhead. What was that? There was so much hype for Rex Burkhead in the preseason, and he was named the number 1 back after the second preseason game, and then he barely got the football. I know he wasn't super efficient or effective running the ball, but come on, Rex Burkhead, having more than double the amount of touches than Dameon Pierce in week 1 in a game that you look like you had in hand if you're the Texans, just seems like coaching malpractice from that perspective, and just the coaching decision at the end. I just hated it. I don't hate Lovie Smith. I was just really surprised that he made that call. All right. Anyone else have any questions? Khalil Herbert will replace David Montgomery, unfortunately. David Montgomery is still really good. He's not a burner, but just like at Iowa State, laterally, he's outstanding. His contact balance is really good. But I will say I loved Khalil Herbert in last year's draft coming out of Virginia Tech. I thought the Bears stole him in the 6th round. They actually had an awesome 6th round in 2021. Drafted my guy who is in fixture on the practice squad power rankings, Thomas Graham, who's still in the practice squad and should not be there in Chicago. Khalil Herbert was super elusive at Virginia Tech. The contact balance is good. Not a crazy fast guy. He ran 4.59 at the combine. So he's not going to run away from linebackers and certainly not corners and safeties at the NFL level. But he's just really tough to corral in open space. And I think as David Montgomery wants that big contract, it probably wouldn't be the worst idea for the Bears to say, hey, we are going to roll with this 6th rounder over paying someone like David Montgomery big money. But that's not to say David Montgomery is not good. I think he is really the type of running back that we saw in his breakout season last year. He's really a good back. Different style than what teams want. A lot of teams want those splash plays when they do run the football. Like, I don't think he would be that favorited by someone like Kyle Shanahan that really prioritizes speed at the running back position. But he's very elusive and just always feels like he's going to be among the league leaders in broken tackles, missed tackles force. And that's really important. Running backs being able to make the most out of what's blocked in front of them. All right. Got some fantasy things. What do you think about the end of the Panthers game and the possible missed calls? They missed a call. The refs absolutely missed a fake spike into a spike from Jacoby Brissett. Matt Rule, I'm not the biggest fan of his coaching in these first couple of years in Carolina, but he pointed it out that the Browns absolutely should have been called for a flag there. They weren't. That is just a miss. Like, it wouldn't shock me if the NFL comes out and says, yeah, we made a mistake. I mean, sometimes the league does so. In most cases, they don't. But this would be a situation where it would not shock me if the NFL does say, hey, we made a mistake here. Of course, not going to change anything, but to just at least acknowledge it. They absolutely should, because the Panthers, they got hosed at the end of that game. All right. I want to talk about all the games. Talked about Houston, Indy ending in a tie, which is just brutal. Commanders, Jaguars. I watched all of Trevor Lawrence's dropbacks. That article's up on CBSSports.com. My first and second year quarterback grade series that I ran last season. There was no rookie quarterbacks, but the year 2 guys were in there. Trevor Lawrence made more of the wow throws than I saw early in his season last year, which probably makes sense. He's, was a rookie last year, now fully having 1 year under his belt. Those throws are going to be seen more often. I thought the offense in general looked a lot more competent. He was just more comfortable inside the pocket, but he was under pressure a ton. Way too much at this point, even for a quarterback that has as much talent as him. Took 2 intentional groundings, got sacked a couple of times, I'm pretty sure. Christian Kirk, I posted the TikTok earlier today, 6 catches, 117 yards. I thought Doug Peterson did a great job scheming him up against linebackers in the slot to run option routes and just get open. Trevor Lawrence looked good, not great. Carson Wentz looked pretty solid. They have the 4 touchdowns. Did he throw for over 300? Yeah, 313 yards. Carson Wentz looked good. I mean, he's facing, I think, a bottom-tier defense still in Jacksonville. But I think if you're both teams, you're happy if you're a Commanders fan because they got the win. It was probably a little closer than you wanted. Didn't want to be trailing the Jaguars in the 4th quarter. If you're the Jaguars, you're happier about just the competence of the entire offense. The skill positions are better. James Robinson looked good. Travis Etienne had kind of a welcome to the NFL type game. Took a couple big hits. But I think Trevor Lawrence looked a lot better. What do you make of CMC's first game back? Where were they too protective of him? They probably were too protective. I mean, he wasn't super efficient, but I think they understand that this is a running back that's dealt with a bunch of injuries the past 2 seasons. They don't want to give him that 30-touch game right away and run him into the ground. Because I think Matt Rule understands, like, yeah, he's got to win games, but certainly not going to help if CMC is, hurt by week 3 again, and then you don't have that explosive weapon in the offense. And really, I mean, like I said earlier, I haven't been a huge fan of what Matt Rule has done as a coach. Probably should have given Christian McCaffrey more carries than what he ultimately got. I mean, you can kind of look at it like both ways. Say, hey, you want to have Christian McCaffrey on the field, but if you're Matt Rule, you also cannot start off 0-4 because you will be extremely on the hot seat at that point. To only have 10 carries. I know he only had 33 yards, but he did have a touchdown. I think Baker and the Panthers offense looked way more competent. A lot of play action, a lot of bootlegging, getting Robbie Anderson over 100 yards. I would have played Laviska Shenault. I wouldn't have had him inactive. I mean, maybe that was just because he's learning the offense, but they need as many weapons as possible to help Baker, to help Matt Rule, to help the whole offense. I would have had Laviska Shenault there as just kind of that bubble screen guy who can create after the catch on those underneath throws. But Baker did look good. He certainly did enough to win the game. If the Browns missed that field goal, we're talking about how Baker played so well and started off beating his old team in week 1. So the Browns were the Browns in that they had Jacoby Brissett. He wasn't very good, but he wasn't terrible. It was offensive line dominated, defensive line dominated, Nick Chubb dominated, and they got the big play down the field from their elite explosiveness receiver in Donovan Peoples-Jones. All right. Any other questions? Again, I'm Chris Trapasso. This is the Nameless Football Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're live on YouTube and on TikTok. I believe this is my my second ever live stream on YouTube, but I've done a ton of these on TikTok. And I said I want to talk about every single game. We have about five more minutes or so. Ravens Jets went about as expected. I know that the spread was not 15 points, but they blitzed the hell out of Joe Flacco. He had problems dealing with it. He, in garbage time, gets over 300 yards passing, but that was not indicative of the type of performance that Joe Flacco had. Lamar Jackson looked good, and I like those deep strikes from him. It kind of was reminiscent of what he did in 2019 in that season opener in Miami when he threw, I think, 5 touchdowns, had a couple of long balls to Marquise Brown in that game, had the Rashad Bateman touchdown, the Devin Duvernay touchdown. Didn't have to do a ton with his legs. And that's kind of the one concern that a lot of the naysayers for Lamar Jackson have is like, we know what he can do with his legs. He can set records in terms of rushing at the quarterback position, but can he do it as a passer, especially without a ton of household names on that offense? Look out for Rashad Bateman to break out. He has all the physical ability, the nuanced skill, beating press at the line, creating separation, winning those contested catch situations, creating after the catch every once in a while. We saw the big play from him down the field, and the Ravens are going to be suffocating on defense. It is a shame, though. The Ravens have just been so bitten by the injury bug over the past couple of seasons. To lose Kendall Fuller in week 1 to a torn ACL, it's not devastating. It's not losing Marcus Peters, but I was expecting Kendall Fuller was going to have a big season. Or Kyle Fuller, excuse me, not Kendall Fuller. Kyle Fuller, to lose him in week 1 was a big loss because I think he's still a very capable corner. And that Ravens defense, with how much they blitz, is a very cornerback-friendly scheme. Yes, they ask you to play a lot of man, but you're going to see a lot of wobbly passes and hurried throws based on the amount of times and just the frequency that the Ravens are going to blitz. Broncos Seahawks. It's a little bit of a strange game. Javonte Williams needs to get the ball more than 7 times on the ground. I talked about that game. Yes, Nate Hackett made the wrong decision. And he said it today in his press conference. He said, looking back on it, we made the wrong decision. You traded for Russell Wilson. Let him not even cook. Just let him throw a 6-yard pass. You know that in that situation, the Seahawks were going to play off and be afraid of the big play down the field to move them really into field goal range. They probably could have gotten something 6 yards to move the chains, move it closer into field goal range for Brandon McManus, who has a monster leg. But it's one thing to say, hey, can you make it from 64? The kick would have been good from 64. Imagine how small the goalposts must look if you're a kicker from 64 yards out. They have to look extremely tiny. Bad decision by Nate Hackett, and that's kind of what was baked into that Vegas line being only 6.5 for a team that everyone expects to be maybe the worst team in the NFL in the Seattle Seahawks, and a team that a lot of people picked to win the AFC West in the Denver Broncos. First-time head coach, raucous environment, the reunion stuff. Just a very strange game. The 2 fumbles inside the 5. I mean, when do you ever see that from 2 different running backs? Super strange. Okay, anyone else have any questions? Giants versus Panthers prediction. I think at this point, let me think. At this point, I think the Giants are a little bit further ahead in terms of just where they are as a roster than the Panthers, but I like Baker Mayfield a little bit more than Daniel Jones in terms of just what he's capable of doing on the football field. And it is kind of weird how we saw so many missed kicks in week 1, how the narrative completely changes. if that kick is made at the end of the game by Randy Bullock for the Titans, then it's not all about what a great job Daniel Jones did leading the comeback. I think we would still have heard that a little bit, but it would have been a lot more like, man, this was such a crushing loss for this new Giants regime to lose in week 1. So I think the Panthers probably, I haven't seen, where is that game? Can someone let me know? Is that in Carolina or is it on the road for the Panthers? So yeah, 2 very evenly matched teams. I mean, if you're betting that one, good luck. That could even be a pick'em game. What's up? Let's see. Do you think the Chiefs will win by 5+ points? No Keenan Allen, no JC Jackson. I'm kind of leaning in that direction. I think the Chargers will put up a really good fight. They've beaten the Chiefs during the Patrick Mahomes era. When they've lost to them, it's like been in overtime. They've been tightly contested games. I think the combo of Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are going to do a lot to disrupt Patrick Mahomes without having to blitz him. That's the case with any quarterback, and certainly throughout the test of time, it's stood up within the test of time that when you're facing an elite quarterback, if you can get home with 4 and drop 7, you're going to have a lot of success. But I'm just worried about Justin Herbert being able to do enough with Josh Palmer, Austin Eckler, no Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams against what the Chiefs can do. But I think it's going to be a really good game. Actually, +5 is kind of a lot, just in terms of Vegas lines for teams that haven't played yet this year. There's a lot of new pieces in Kansas City. Like I mentioned, new pieces in LA with the Chargers. That's going to be a really close game. Those teams know each other. The coaching staffs know each other. The front offices really know each other well too. I could see that coming down to a field goal or being something like 31-27 Chiefs. But really the Chargers are set up with their secondary, especially if they had JC Jackson, but they don't, to stop what the Chiefs do, spreading you out, creating a lot of space. They still have Derwin James. They have a lot of pieces in that back 7 that can limit what the Chiefs do. You're not going to ever stop the Chiefs, or very rarely going to stop the Chiefs. But without Tyreek Hill, that's kind of a whole new dynamic to that offense. Were you impressed? This is from Just Bryson. Were you impressed by Trey Lance, or Justin Fields more? So I did my year 2 quarterback grade series this past, actually today. And I believe I gave Justin Fields a higher grade, like C-. Certainly factoring in the rain, that was kind of how I had to grade those both those quarterbacks on a curve, because it was a really difficult conditions. Not just raining, it was like a driving rain. Justin Fields made like 1 or 2 big time throws. Same with Trey Lance. I thought Fields managed the game better, didn't look as antsy inside the pocket. And that's just, to me, watching both of those quarterbacks back to back in the same conditions in the same game, it looked like one quarterback has a year of starting experience under his belt and one doesn't. That's really what it came down to. So at this point, I would say Justin Fields, I'll give him a slight nod over Trey Lance, just based on what happened in that kind of wacky game in a mostly torrential downpour. And it seemed like, just from the film, that Trey Lance, when he had the football, especially late trying to mount the comeback, that he was dealing with more of a torrential downpour than Justin Fields was, especially early in the game. Okay, a few more games I want to get to. Saints Falcons. I posted a TikTok on Jameis Winston. 158.3 quarterback rating in the fourth quarter. And some like, holy crap, yeah, this guy was a first overall pick type throws through tight windows, crazy velocity, tons of anticipation. The comeback was ferocious. They had to come back in a hurry. They didn't get a 2-point conversion. He leads the game-winning drive with a deep ball to Jarvis Landry down the left sideline in traffic to get them 2 plays later into field goal range. It was a really good performance from Jameis Winston. And for Saints fans, to see Michael Thomas, 5 catches, 53 yards, 2 big touchdowns in the fourth quarter, that's got to be a huge sigh of relief after pretty much not seeing Michael Thomas on the field for the past, 2 seasons, basically, outside of a few games. Before that, he was setting the NFL record in receptions for a season. So to have him back, you throw in Jarvis Landry, who I thought looked a lot more spry than he had over the past couple of seasons, looked just a lot more juice in his legs. Chris Olave made a few plays. Great comeback by the Saints. Kind of felt like that was one for the Falcons, with Marcus Mariota using his legs, CPAT playing really well, going over 100 yards. Drake London after kind of a slow start in the first quarter, making some plays. The defense played really well initially. They locked down a lot of those weapons and Jameis Winston in those first 3 quarters. But it kind of feels like the Saints are a much better team at this point. I don't think they're crazy better than the Falcons, but there are a lot of people, including Peter King, that like think the Saints are going to be awesome. I didn't see that before the season, but if Jameis Winston continues, he doesn't have to have 158.3 quarterback rating every game, but if he continues to have like a quarter of that every game or so, the Saints are going to be a pretty good team because I still think they're pretty decent defensively. Not great, not amazing. A lot of their stars are aging. DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan chief among them. They trade Chauncey Gardner-Johnson away before the season. They're going to be tough to beat, though, with Jameis Winston, with that arm strength, that pocket ability, anticipation throws. And if he can just limit his mistakes, the Saints will be better than I expected and kind of exceed my expectations. I have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Darrell Henderson. Should I try and trade any? No. No more. I'm not taking any more fantasy questions. I only have a few more minutes. Eagles, Lions, another one. The upstart team starts off with the lead, and then the team that everyone expects to be really good takes the lead. Not exactly like Saints, Falcons, or like Texans, Colts, but I love the way that the Lions fought. They even got down by double digits in the fourth quarter, and they brought that game all the way with a 14-point fourth quarter back to 38-35. Jared Goff played pretty well. DeAndre Swift was outstanding. I thought a lot of the defensive players, Malcolm Rodriguez, the linebacker, I posted a video on that just today about how good he was in his debut. He only played 44 snaps. He's got to play more than that. And for the Eagles, Jordan Davis, I have a TikTok coming tonight on his performance in week 1. Pretty, to me, not surprising, but to a lot of people, kind of eye-opening what he did. A.J. Brown is a man amongst boys when he's on the football field. He is not only fast, he can not only create separation, but he is a horse once he has the football in his hands. He is absolutely, to me, the best yak receiver in the NFL, up there with Deebo Samuel. And he runs routes outstandingly as well, having 155 yards, 10 carries. Even Miles Sanders got going. The Eagles up front on offense and defense looked really, really good against a Lions team that will be good in the trenches as well this season. They were missing some pieces on offense. I think that maybe held them back a little bit. If you're the Lions, you're like, man, we went 1-6 in one-score games last year, and now we lose another close one at home by 3 points. But you got to feel better about how the team started and how they were able to rebound late and nearly steal a win from a team that a lot of people have winning the NFC East, or I think now everyone. 2 more games. Patriots, Dolphins. Mac Jones was bad. The offense was super vanilla. Check down, swing passes, throws into the flat. There was like 1 or 2. There was one downfield throw, I believe. Was it Kendrick Bourne or Jacoby Myers that was dropped into the bucket? Beyond that, it was not a good performance from Mac Jones. The offensive line wasn't very good. Their defense was okay. There was a sack fumble that turned into a touchdown by Melvin Ingram. So this game was just really pedestrian all the way around. I thought Tua did a good job. Wasn't amazing, but he got the football out quickly. Tyreek Hill kind of saved him. There was one he kind of just lofted up. Tyreek Hill is being 5'9", 5'10", whatever he is. Looks like he's not going to be great in those contested catch situations, but certainly is. Stole that ball from a Patriots cornerback. Jalen Waddle got into the end zone for the Dolphins. So if you're the Dolphins, you should feel happy. You should feel, good about starting 1-0. I don't know if this was a statement game or anything major like that. And for the Patriots, they have to go back to the drawing board offensively, especially after just how vanilla that offensive attack was. All right, a few more thoughts on the Dallas reverse Cowgirls. Very funny. They are in trouble. I mean, I think the low-hanging fruit was this offseason and going into this game and certainly after this game. The Cowboys trade Amari Cooper. They let La'el Collins walk. They don't really add anyone on either side of the ball. They lose Randy Gregory. They don't sign Von Miller. They don't sign Chandler Jones. They're running with, certainly they have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. Trevon Diggs is going to have a bunch of interceptions this season. They don't have a great offensive line. Connor McGovern gets hurt early in that game. They just don't have the weapons right now for Dak Prescott, and now he's injured. So the Cowboys are majorly in trouble. If Dak Prescott can return by like week 5 or 6, could maybe salvage the season. They could sneak into the playoffs. But I think with Cooper Rush starting for the next month, without a great offensive line and without weapons, that's a recipe for disaster for a young, inexperienced quarterback. All right. Steelers, Bengals. I watched a ton of this game. Absolutely bananas. I posted, I wrote an article about what in the world happened to Joe Burrow in this game. You can see that on CBSSports.com. I'm going a little bit longer here on the Nameless Football Show than I wanted to. Got to pare this down maybe for next week. Joe Burrow was late and he did not throw with anticipation in this game. And I thought last season he was so good throwing with anticipation. Certainly was the case in 2019 at LSU when he set all those records, that it almost was like he understood and acknowledged that he doesn't have a monster arm and he's not going to be able to see a receiver open and then deliver the football. He's going to have to throw before those receivers get out of his break. It felt like he was rusty and was just not sped up to how quick secondaries are in the NFL. He certainly started a bunch of games, was just in the Super Bowl 6 months ago, but the anticipatory throws were not there and he was late. And that's why he was intercepted 3 of the 4 times. The one was an amazing play by JJ Watt right at the line of scrimmage. The 7 sacks mostly were on the offensive line, but Joe Burrow was only pressured 16 times and 7 of those turning into a sack. It's like 43% of the time a pressure was turning into a sack. That's way too high. And Joe Burrow was among the league leaders. And that's a stat you do not want to be a league leader in if you're a quarterback, in pressure to sack ratio or percentage last season. Guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert are like below 15%. Joe Burrow was in the mid-20s last season. And to have certainly one game is a small sample size, but almost half of your pressures turning into sacks speaks to his lack of improvisation. Now, he was a great ad-libber in that epic season of 2019 at LSU, but you could see he was making defenders miss. He has a good feel for being elusive, but he's not a twitchy, sudden, dynamic athlete. When his offensive line is not protecting him well, I think he's, again, going to be one of the more sacked quarterbacks in football. Packers and Vikings was just a bloodbath. I'm surprised it was higher than 23-7. It just looked like from the get-go they were not going to be able to cover Justin Jefferson, and Aaron Rodgers was extremely uncomfortable. Now, Packers fans certainly would say, hey, look, we remember last season, losing 38-3 to the Saints and Aaron Rodgers using his relax phrase once again, and then they go 13-3 or 13-4, whatever it was, getting the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's fine if you're clinging to that right now, because under the Aaron Rodgers era, or during the Aaron Rodgers era, the Packers have won a ton of games. And with Matt LaFleur, they've been super successful in the regular season. This team just feels a little different to me. I think we will see plays made by Romeo Doubs, by Christian Watson, maybe Amani Rodgers, Randall Cobb at this point late in his career. I just don't think this team is that good again. I like the pieces they have on defense. Jair Alexander didn't have a great performance, but they did play a lot of zone against Justin Jefferson. Rashawn Gary played okay, but I thought Christian Darrisaw did a great job against him. I posted a TikTok on that today. I thought he was a star against the Packers. I thought he was so good in those true one-on-one pass sets, whether it was Preston Smith, whether it was a blitzing linebacker, or Rashawn Gary, who was super efficient as a pass rusher, a high-volume pass rusher last season. If he's getting stymied against second-year left tackles, and I will say Christian Darrisaw is super talented, the Packers, I don't want to say will be in trouble, but it's not going to be just a cakewalk to win the NFC North this season. I do think they'll rebound. Aaron Rodgers will make plays. Matt LaFleur knows how to call plays. They have enough talent on both sides of the football, and to get David Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins back will certainly help, because they're studs up front. But this team is in a little bit of murky waters at this point, and we kind of saw that in that opener in week 1. All right, does anyone else have any non-fantasy questions? I'm Chris Trapasso. This is the Nameless Football Show. Every Tuesday, 6:30, 6:45. I think I'm going to push it a little later, 6:45. Every single Tuesday during the NFL season. What other games did I not talk about? Oh, we got a bunch. Chiefs Cardinals. I should have bet $1 million on that game. I don't bet. But if I did, that one seems so obvious that it was going to go over. and that the Chiefs were going to blow out the Cardinals. No J.J. Watt, no Trayvon Mullen, who the Cardinals just traded for, the cornerback from the Raiders. You don't want to go into a matchup against Patrick Mahomes without your best pass rusher and with a bunch of bottom of the roster players, plus Byron Murphy in your secondary. You just don't want a beat up secondary when you're facing Patrick Mahomes. Now, there was maybe like 5% of the people that were worried about what's going to happen without Tyreek Hill. I don't think the Chiefs can replicate Tyreek Hill's presence, but with Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, who had the one big catch down the field, certainly Travis Kelce still there, a good offensive line, nice talent in the running back room. It wasn't like I expected the Chiefs to just suddenly be a mediocre offense. And Patrick Mahomes didn't make a ton of ridiculous throws. There was the one deep down the left sideline that was outstanding, but he can be that high efficiency quarterback going 30 of 39 for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns, even if not every other throw is through a tight window. He knows how to manage the game and understands Andy Reid's offense to a T, and that's obvious. The Cardinals, I think, truly are in trouble. I tweeted during the game, I think they might be the worst team defensively in football this season. They have some first-round players on defense, Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, neither of which played particularly well in this game. But so many young pieces, an aging and beat-up J.J. Watt, the secondary, there's Budda Baker and not much else. I think the Cardinals, and this is not taking anything away from what Kansas City did, scoring 44 points really with ease in this game. But I think the Cardinals are going to really struggle defensively. And without DeAndre Hopkins, it's going to be hard for Kyler Murray and company to win those shootouts that their defense is allowing 40 points. They're not going to be able to match teams and end with 21 points like they did in this game. All right, I think Texans or Giants, Titans I talked about. Saquon was fresh, posted a video on him. I think yesterday he was outstanding, 164 yards. The vision, the suddenness, the power, the pure speed was certainly there. I thought Ryan Tannehill played a pretty good game. He's someone like Patrick Mahomes in a way that knows the offense really well. And I think their offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, kind of took from Arthur Smith great ways to scheme open easy throws for Ryan Tannehill, who is going to get the ball out of his hands in a hurry. But you kind of saw how the Titans miss Harold Landry. And he's a good edge rusher. He's not an elite edge rusher. They're kind of lacking up front beyond Danico Autry and Jeffrey Simmons. They don't have that high caliber edge rusher at this point. I mean, Bud Dupree is good on stunts and as a blitzer, but he's not a one-on-one winner consistently. You saw that as the Giants mounted that comeback that Daniel Jones, who's been very susceptible to turning over the football, fumbling the ball, making bad decisions, was not under pressure a ton late in that game. What did you think of Andrew Thomas in week 1? He and Evan Neal were good, and that's kind of a segue off what I was just mentioning. They weren't facing the top-tier edge rushing talent, but I thought Andrew Thomas has really settled into becoming a top 5 to 7 young edge or young left tackle in football. That Andrew Thomas was good, Evan Neal was good. That's a good sign. If you have quality blocking in front of any quarterback, but certainly Daniel Jones, you're going to see legitimate returns on what you're trying to do offensively. What were you impressed on how the Texans performed? I was impressed, but not surprised in that I thought 4.5 wins that Vegas set for the Texans this season seemed way too low. I mean, they get the tie, so it's not a win or a loss, obviously, in week 1. But Davis Mills was my highest graded first or second year quarterback last season. He was really good, especially down the stretch. I love Brandon Cooks. I think they do need more weapons. If they had John Mechie, that would certainly help as that complementary piece. They need Nico Collins to step up. There's day 2 pick last year out of Michigan, the wide receiver. Brevin Jordan makes some plays, more plays. OJ Howard with the 2 touchdowns. I think as this team kind of settles into its identity with Dameon Pierce running the ball more than Rex Burkhead, I think they will be that pesky team that's an upstart club that's not ready for the playoffs yet, but that no one's going to really want to face. And I think the Colts don't want to necessarily face or aren't going to be happy or circle on the calendar, hey, when we face the Texans again, that's an easy win. It's certainly not going to be. I like the pieces that they have. Jonathan Grenard up front, Obo Okoronkwo up front, Jalen Petrie missed a bunch of tackles, but made a lot of plays as well. Derek Stingley had a great pass breakup in the end zone. They have some pieces finally in Houston after the really debacle over the past couple of seasons. I talked about Raiders Chargers. Justin Herbert made just a bunch of ridiculous throws in that game. And to not get a huge performance from Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, still score 24 points, not make a ton of mistakes. It looked like Justin Herbert was a very comfortable behind that offensive line. Max Crosby was really good again. He had a ton of pressures in that game, but Justin Herbert did a good job getting the ball out of his hands and then mixing in some of those ridiculous tight window throws, 20 plus yards on the football field. And again, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack on the same defensive line is borderline unfair. Bucks Cowboys. I'll finish with these two games, like the two primetime games that we had. Bucks Cowboys was kind of a stinker. It was boring. I mean, it was Tom Brady, Cowboys. It on paper seems like, oh, this is an easy pick for Sunday Night Football. I talked about the Cowboys. Offensively, the Bucks just looked like a different team in terms of its identity. It's like they want to run the ball, use Leonard Fournette, use that stable of backs that they have. Rashad White. It didn't look like Tom Brady was fully ready to start the season yet. And normally he is. I do think Brady will get into a groove like he has his entire career. He just wasn't ready yet. The secondary, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Antoine Winfield with the interception early. The secondary is young and very good. And that's going to help the Buccaneers early in the season as the offense kind of finds its way. Now they lose Chris Godwin again for a couple weeks. Is it going to be Mike Williams? How big of a contribution are they going to get from Julio Jones? Are they going to target Julio Jones a lot in this offense? As that happens, I think that the secondary, Vita Vea, the pieces up front will do a lot to help this team win games like this, 19-3. I don't think they're going to keep every team to 3 points, but win lower scoring games. And then lastly, Bills and Rams. The Bills were clearly the better team from the jump. I mean, outside of a couple of those fluky turnovers, the Bills were way better on offense, on defense, the defensive line, the offensive lines, the skill position players. It really wasn't until that late reception in like the fourth quarter that Cooper Kupp made a couple guys miss. He had like 10 catches for 85 yards before that. Like they were allowing him to catch the ball and he was getting open like he always does. But the Bills did a good job corralling him until that one play deep down the field where he just really created after the catch. I think it was like a 40 or 50 yard gain. The Bills were really, really good. Josh Allen was outstanding. How about the rotational depth? Not just Von Miller, but Gregory Rousseau, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, all 4+ pressures in this game. Daquan Jones, the nose tackle that they brought over in free agency, had a good game. Tim Settle had a couple of pressures. Ed Oliver got dinged up, hurt his ankle, still had 2 pressures. Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano made plays. The young secondary that everyone wanted to talk about before that game, Christian Benford and Dane Jackson, 7th rounder and 6th rounder from Pittsburgh and Villanova, respectively, held up very well. Jordan Poyer, the all-pro safety, had a pick on an overthrow. The Bills looked really, really good, and they kind of different from Tom Brady, very much looked ready to go from the jump against the Rams. And the Rams are kind of how I feel about the Packers. They're still going to be good. I'm not going to say they're in trouble. They're going to totally miss the playoffs and win 7 games. But the offensive line, similar to the Packers, little concerning. You have Cooper Kupp, but who else do you have to catch the football? Yeah, Van Jefferson will return, but is he that dangerous? Defense, you have a few stars, but is the rest of your depth good? The one guy I will highlight beyond Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones. He was on my breakout player list before the season. He was really, really good against the Bills. Rangy, active, athletic, hustled, made some plays in coverage, was very good on outside runs. Ernest Jones, next to Bobby Wagner, might ultimately be that legitimate or will be that breakout player on that Rams defense this season. Daniel Jones, good or bad week 1, passer rating and total QBR split. He's kind of in the middle. I didn't think he was great, but I didn't think he was terrible, especially as they mounted the comeback. He made a couple of nice throws, but there were still some Daniel Jones-esque misses in this game and franticness inside the pocket. All right, I did not mean for this to go 1 hour, but I guess to talk about the entire slate of week 1 games does take that long as I'm taking your questions. Sorry, I started a little late tonight. I had a little technical malfunction. I have my phone here, my computer there, a camera here. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, the Nameless Football Show every Tuesday, 6:45, let's say. Give me a few extra minutes to put the kids up, get them settled before bed. to jump on for another Nameless Football Show every Tuesday, 6:45. And I got to figure out how to close because I'm not great at doing that. I haven't had a lot of experience. But I'm Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports. Thank you for watching the Nameless Football Show.